subjects you would think is actually, where do we draw the line? Where is it okay? When is it right to keep following government rule, as it were? And where does that overstep into God's rule, God's authority? Probably something that we haven't still got right today. Every Christian hasn't fully understood, and we probably won't fully understand that. Where is the line? Because sometimes it will probably turn into something like Christian nationalism, where it's all just rooted in the country with a bit of Christianity thrown in. I hope today we'll get a clear understanding that obviously it's God first, but God honouring the authority of government that he has put in place. Not that God's saying that this is perfect in any way, because it is humans and we're all imperfect and we're all do silly things. Even governments, that would be a surprise to you, wouldn't it? And MPs and all sorts. So that's what we're going to look at today, is how do we submit to earthly authority in the right way? I think most of us do spend probably all our lives under some sort of authority, a manager, a landlord, a local council, a government. Obviously, most countries would be under a government, a school, a workplace, and even in ordinary family life, there are people whose decisions affect us, and our lives are affected by what those people, those decisions are. And probably, if we're honest, that's often where our patience runs thin, when it doesn't quite work with what we agree with. It is one thing to talk about respecting authority in general. I think it's another thing to live under a decision you think is unwise, a decision that's unfair, or maybe even poorly explained. I think you probably know the feeling. You sit in a meeting, if you're at work, and you hear a plan that will create more work for everyone. That's sort of double-edged sword, I think, from my own experience. You might receive an email that changes your role without much thought for how it will land with that person. You watch someone with power make a call that affects your whole week, whether that's in work or not. It might affect your income, your peace of mind, and yet we would probably feel there's very little we can do about it. We feel powerless. And in those moments, some of us get probably quite angry, frustrated, annoyed. Some of us go quiet and we stew, we boil underneath as we hate these decisions. I would say even hate. We do go far as that, I think. We hate some decisions that are made that affect us and we have no direct control over. Maybe you're like me and you start rehearsing some sort of speech and scenario in your head. And you think, well, if I was doing this, what I would say this. And I would say this to them, and I would do this. And if I was in charge, I would do this. And you start playing all sorts of things out in your head. And then some of us, maybe we look for a way out. Some of us want to challenge everything immediately, whether that helps or not. We don't control, as the Bible says, we don't apply self-control. So we just unleash whatever was in there, we let it go, and we're going to let you have it. I'm going to let you have it. Make sure you know just how painful this is for me. And underneath those reactions, there is probably a deeper question. As a Christian, the questions may be, how do I live faithfully when I'm not the one in charge and I don't have control? How do I keep a soft heart when I feel, rightly or not, that I feel unheard? How do I honour people over me without pretending that they're always right? We certainly do not want to pretend that people are right, because that leads to dangerous things. Our society already falls to many things that we pretend are right because it gives us, it's just a peace with, gives us peace with everyone else. There is a line, most certainly. But how do we honour people in that way, rightly? When we look at Ecclesiastes 8, as we're looking at today, it does take us into this world. Solomon is writing about life under a king. But the pressure is not strange to us. This is not that distant from us. We still live under imperfect people with real power, and Solomon wants to teach us how to live wisely there. How do we continue to live wisely? Even if that's talking about a king, it is still rule. It is still someone has authority over you, whatever that looks like, a king, a government, or whatever. What he's not asking us to do is to pretend that every leader is good. He's not telling us that power never gets misused, because it clearly does. What he's doing is he's helping people who live under authority face a reality without becoming hard-hearted, without becoming restless or foolish. How do we navigate that carefully? So let's look at verse 1. And what Solomon does, he begins with two questions here. And he says, who is like the wise? Who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face, and changes its hard appearance. The first part of the verse reminds us that wisdom is rare and valuable. Who is like the wise, he says? Who knows the explanation of things? What Solomon is not saying is, he's not saying wise people understand everything. He's saying that wisdom helps a person see more clearly than panic or pride does. So it's not about always being wise, it's wisdom. The Bible talks of wisdom as a shield, but it's talking about something that you have, something that is available to you rather than being a wise person. God has it available to us every day, but it does help us see more clearly rather than going to panic or pride. And then he gives us this very human picture. Wisdom brightens a person's face. It changes a hard appearance. When we feel powerless under authority, our faces probably tell the story before our mouths do. You can most certainly, for most of us, you'll be able to read the mood that you are in by looking at someone's face. It is very difficult to not let the mood you're in, the emotions you're experiencing, come out to your face. It's just very difficult because you're thinking so much you don't even know what your face looks like unless you carry a mirror around with you all the time thinking, how do I look? Do I look smiley? I've always got... This is why what we don't want, and we talk about the pretending here, we certainly do not want Christians walking around smiling to the point that it's pretense, that we're faking it. Because the expectation of the world is, well, you're a Christian, you should just be happy all the time. In fact, and I've argued this before, knowing the truth of what the world is really like and who Jesus is would probably lead you, in some ways, to be more troubled and more disheartened because of the comparison. You see a broken world around you because Jesus has opened your eyes to it, and yet you can see the beauty of the cross and the amazing salvation of Jesus Christ at the same time. The grace and the mercy on all of us who have broken the world, who have caused sin towards God. But our face tells a story. We look tense. We might even look closed, like we don't want to be bothered by anyone. If it's really bad, we look like we're ready for a fight. I don't know now, but I used to, when I cut my hair, so I noticed a difference. It wasn't here, but I would notice a difference with certain people that I'd meet occasionally. And when my hair was cut, they'd treat me with a bit more, hold on, what's he going to do today? With long hair, they're as soft as anything. It's really weird. Appearance matters. It's really weird to other people. I can't help. I like having my hair short. But for some people, it changes their interaction with you. I know some people look like, and especially when you then say, you're talking about life and where you maybe come from, and you say, I grew up in Deptford, and they're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Here's a guy who looks almost like a skinhead, and he grew up in Deptford. And they stand back. I've seen this so many times. We look at the surface, we look at people and their faces, and we're worried that they might not be responsive to what we're about to say to them. Even if we say the right words, our whole manner can say, I'm against this, I'm against you, even if that person is not actually against you. I think we talked about this last week, excuse me. We talked about this last week. This idea that we do kind of tend to, whatever's burdening us, will probably take out on others and people around us to some degree or another. There is some degree we can't help that. So I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's very difficult to kind of compartmentalize everybody. You might be angry to some, I won't say righteous degree, but you might be right to be angry at someone. But actually, how do we say, well, this is the thing that's bothering me, but when I go and see others around me, my friends who haven't bothered me or made me angry, I'm going to be really nice. That's not how it works, is it? It tends to overflow. It tends to affect everybody around you, how we are. But Solomon says wisdom does something better. He says it softens us, not by making us weak, not by making us dishonest, but by settling us. A wise person can live under pressure without letting that pressure turn them harsh. And that's probably for everybody. I think probably everybody needs to hear that. It is possible to be factually right about something and still respond badly. It's possible to see a flaw in a decision and still carry yourself in a way that damages the trust between others. It's possible to disagree and still remain steady, respectful and clear-headed. We are called, certainly as Christians, when it comes to the gospel, conversations about the gospel. How do we avoid arguments? Yeah, speak truth. It's very easy to be pulled into arguments and to start getting so pulled down that you're not talking about the gospel anymore. You're just talking about a couple of opinions that you have. It's very easy to get pulled down into this. Think about how often our hardest moments with authority made us worse by our own manner. The decision may already be difficult, and then we had sharp words, cold silence, sarcasm, whatever. You see where it drives you, these decisions that others make that affect your life. We then have one maybe out of 10 other reactions we could possibly have with people. It affects us. It affects us how we interact with people. Maybe we refuse to listen to an explanation to something that we may disagree with. And before long, the original issue is joined by a second problem. Now our heart is hard. Now we're displaying that for everyone to see. Now everyone's got to experience the mood that I'm in. But Solomon is not telling us to fake a smile. He's not telling us just to be happy for the sake of it. He's telling us that wisdom settles a person. And what it does is it keeps us from being ruled by the first rush of frustration. So in probably many sermons, the one thing that seems to be coming up, especially with Ecclesiastes, is taking this breath, taking this beat, just a moment, just take a breath before you say anything, before you make a judgment on something. He's saying, don't be ruled by the first rush of frustration. Wisdom helps us to stay present. It helps us to think clearly and respond in a way that does not destroy what still can be helped. Before Solomon talks about obeying a king, he talks about the kind of person you become while living under one. Wisdom starts in the heart and shows on your face. If our first response to authority is always hardness, we may need more than better arguments. We may need wisdom, what Solomon is inviting us to. So then Solomon moves to from the wise person to this person living under a king. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 2 to 5 says, obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. Verse 2 gives the main reason for obedience. He says, because you took an oath before God. Solomon does not say, obey because the king is always right. He doesn't say, obey because every ruler is godly. He roots his obedience in responsibility before God. What does God want me to do? When we look at Solomon's world and the context that he was in, people lived under royal power that could be sudden and strong. We see this in Daniel. King just seems to be making decisions left, right, and center. Suddenly he loves Daniel, and then suddenly Daniel can go to the lions. King's word carries weight. Verse 4 says it plainly. It says, since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, what are you doing? And this is, I think, the reality of concentrated power. We cannot always talk back safely. We cannot always reverse a decision. We cannot always force the outcome that we want. We do need to be careful here as Christians. Earthly authority is real, but it's not ultimate. No boss, no government, no human leader can stand in God's place. When human commands clearly require us to disobey God, then God's people must obey God. And Scripture holds both truths together quite easily. We honor earthly authority and we fear God above all. We honor earthly authority because God says he put it in place. But that authority, when it becomes reckless, when it starts to go against or try to take the place of God, which is really important, take the place of, not because of a certain policy you disagree with, not because of some decision that was made, but literally because it tries to replace God, then government is not honoring God anymore. Even if it's not a Christian government, it's now operating in this space where it's actually trying to claim the mantle of God. And so Solomon is aiming at a more ordinary problem, not the rare moment of open persecution, but the regular temptation to react badly under people we do not fully trust or respect. I'll go back to this verse 3. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not walk out too quickly. Do not throw away, king's presence. Do not walk out too quickly. It's basically what it's saying. Do not throw away your place in anger, your moment. Do not leave the room in anger. And probably many of us have damaged situations by reacting too fast. Yes, and amen, definitely. Damaged situations, probably hopefully less so as you get older and you get more experience and you become a bit more calmer and a bit more peaceful. But most certainly, doesn't it feel good to react fast? Doesn't it feel good to get your just desserts for you, not for the other person as it were, but for you most certainly? You want that satisfaction. We might send an email too soon. Oh, I might have sent an email too soon. I can tell you, I might have sent an email too soon. Take a breath. I've tried this way. Let me give you a little email tip. Write the email, don't send it. Have a look at it tomorrow and see what you think. I can tell you that when I've done that, and this is probably a rule for life to be fair, when I've done that, I think, whoa, where was I when I wrote that? That does not seem like me. Doesn't seem like the right frame of mind to send that email in. But maybe we speak too sharply in person. Some people, and I don't think I've been this person ever, resign in the heat of the moment, walk out, leave. I've actually seen that in my experience of working. People have literally just walked out and left because they hated a decision that was taken. But what happens is in all these things, we create a bigger mess than the one we were trying to escape from. We end up making it terrible for ourselves. What was just bad is now awful. But Solomon also says, do not stand up for a bad cause. In other words, do not join every complaint just because you feel frustrated. Not every disagreement is worth escalating. Not every argument is wise. Sometimes what feels like principle, I think, is probably more of our impatience. Sometimes when we feel like we're being courageous, it's probably pride. Solomon says, effectively, wisdom slows us down long enough to ask whether the issue truly needs to be stood on. Is this, what's the saying? Is this the hill that I die on? But verse 5, it brings us balance. He says, whoever obeys his command will come to no harm. The wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. This might be helpful to many people, I think, to understand the Christian faith and how you handle the situations such as these. When we submit to Christ, it's not silence forever. It's not that you just stop speaking, like suddenly you just become a doormat. That's not how this works. Because the problem with that is it's the other extreme of not even speaking truth anymore. When Christians allow themselves to be doormats as such, where's the truth in it? What is that person learning? Now, what I think the Bible does say in general is you can disagree as long as it's in grace and it's in love. You can put your point across, even strongly, but with the goal of treating that person with respect. And so much today is not treating people with respect when we disagree. So much of politics today is about being personal and hateful towards each other. It's gone really bad. And now what we have is because we feed each other, the people feed the politicians feed the people. And so now what we have is a race to the bottom. Who can be the worst towards the next person? But it is something we are addicted to. We're sinful beings and we love something that makes us feel good. So sometimes we look to this thing. Sometimes we want that thing to make us feel better. And so Solomon says, actually, there is a time to speak. There is a right way to raise a concern. There is proper process. Wisdom asks not only what is wrong, but also when should I speak and how should I speak? And I think that's incredibly useful for our everyday life. In a workplace, there's a difference between careful feedback and constant opposition. Something came to mind and I can't say it because we're on a live stream. So I won't say it. I'll share it with you personally about my struggles at work. But I will say this. Many times I have struggled to say, okay, I disagree with you, but it's okay, because I feel there's something righteous about what I've got, the disagreement that I have. But learning to go, hold on a minute, will this particular battle get me anywhere? Probably not. Is that person in the right place to hear my disagreement? Maybe not. Doesn't make me right. Doesn't make me righteous because I'm saying they're wrong. But that's wisdom, isn't it? Is it the right time? And am I doing it in the right way where they can understand what I'm saying? They can appreciate my disagreement. In family life, there's a difference between honest conversation and restless resistance. Under government, there's a difference between lawful concern and a heart that cannot accept being under anyone. I think it's interesting. So many people make a lot about how government controls us and how things, we can't do anything. And I think we forget the freedoms that we have. In this place, if we were actually to compare other parts of the world, this would be the freest place on the planet. You may disagree with that, and that's entirely up to you, but of other regimes in other countries, we like to look at the very small things and go, well, government is controlling me, trying to tell me what to do. But at the same time, we want government to do the things for us, but we don't want to pay for them. All gets wrapped up in all these things. I heard a strange comment. I read a strange comment. They are doing personal home defibrillators now. So you can buy one for your home and have it in your house. So and you can put it anywhere you want. And so they're obviously cheaper than commercial ones. I thought, that's amazing. That's great. Someone's really using some ingenuity here that you can have one at home, affordable potentially, although still expensive. And someone said, and this is a private company, by the way, so someone commented and said, any way for someone to make money, why can't it be for free? And immediately I was spiraled at this point because I've read this comment and I thought, how much did it cost to make this thing? How many people were employed to make this thing? There's all sorts of stuff going on. And yet this idea that somehow I must have everything that I want, but yet I don't want to put anything of my money, my effort into making it happen. I just want you to give it to me for free. Seems to be the way of the world. We live in a strange contradiction, more so probably than any other time, but it is very, very dangerous. But all of this, this wisdom of what Solomon talks about, timing, it protects us from another danger. It protects us from making resistance our default setting. So whenever even a good idea comes along, even a good decision happens, where we've been so entrenched about every other decision, even good decisions become things we hate. Because what we've been so used to is to view every decision through the lens of bad decisions. And the risk is we carry that into really good ones, really good government policy, government decisions, people in the workplace, managers, even so are tainted, even their good decisions, with our bad perspective on them. So there's always a sense, certainly today, that people feel so frustrated with any government, it seems, any leader, but that's coloured through the fact that we don't even want to listen to what they've got to offer. We don't want to hear it because actually I've made my decision. I'm not going to like you from the start. It's really sad because we all have something to offer. Government, people working in government have something to offer. People in our workplaces have something to offer. Again, wisdom. Be careful that not everything that you hear and you see, you immediately are just going to put down because we're not hearing and listening. We're not taking a breath. I will say this though. Some of us have been hurt by poor leadership. And I think in that case and in those experiences, we probably arrive already braced for disappointment. We assume the worst. We struggle to give anyone a fair hearing. But what Solomon says is, he says, slow down. Slow that instinct down. He says it calls us to live before God, not merely to live in reaction to the last person who let us down. It is so, it's heartbreaking to hear experiences of so many other people in other churches as well, to say that one experience simply led them to leave. Of one particular person at one particular moment. And it's weird, isn't it? Because I think for some reason, especially when we've been in work, we seem to be more tolerant of those in work. But when it comes to church, we seem to practice the least amount of forgiveness, the least amount of reconciliation compared to maybe our workplaces, maybe even our day-to-day with our families and all those things. But I've heard so many stories. Now, don't get me wrong. I've heard other stories where it's been relentless, where people have been treated badly every single time, where groups of people have been misled terribly, but have not been treated well at all, not in grace, not in love. And I'm not talking about that. That is poor leadership. That is not looking after the flock. And for that, people need to repent. They're coming to God and they're saying, I am a leader under God. And if you are mistreating his people, I don't know what you think the position that you hold, but you are not going to outdo God. Again, just like Solomon, I want to bring balance. We need to be careful, not writing off terrible experiences over and over again where you've pushed in, sat, been patient. You said, no, I'm going to wait it out. It's going to get better. They're going to see what they're doing. And I get it when it doesn't happen, when it even gets worse. You should leave. When that leader is not listening to the thing that they're doing to other people, when people are bringing it to them, say, look, I think you need to look at this, look at that. Absolutely. Leaders should be listening to their flock. When they double down, when it becomes a monstrous, controlling, overbearing of leadership, it's wrong. So we find balance. People should not have to suffer under that, but we should not also make it worse ourselves. We should be careful that we're not abandoning just because of one incident or one thing. What Solomon is teaching is a settled kind of faithfulness. Honor those over you where you can. Do not rush into conflict. Do not support foolish causes, and when you must speak with timing, clarity, and self-control. So Solomon then gives us this view of how limited earthly power really is. And this is what is kind of brings us the comfort that we need. Authority can feel all too consuming when we're under it, but he reminds us that even the strongest human power has its limits. And he says this in Ecclesiastes 8:6-9, for there is a proper time and a procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighed down by misery, Since no one knows the future, who can tell someone else what is to come? As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has the power over the time of their death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. I think it should be 9 as well, isn't it? I do have 9. All of this I saw as I applied my mind to everything I've done under the sun. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. I think verse 6 is honest. Living under difficult decisions, he says, can leave a person weighed down by misery. And Solomon doesn't ignore that. He knows authority can press on people. He knows waiting for the right time can be hard. He knows obedience can feel heavy. But then he places that heaviness inside a larger reality. No one knows the future. He says, since no one knows the future, who can tell someone else what is to come? Leaders make plans. Workers make plans. Governments make plans. Families make plans. But none of us can guarantee tomorrow. Hence why they're called. And this applies to everyone. It humbles the person under authority, and it humbles the person holding authority. Verse 8 goes further. No one has power over the wind. No one has power over the time of their death. That is Solomon's way of saying that human control has clear limits. A king may command an army. A manager may command a team. A government may pass a law, but none of them command the breath in their lung. None of them decide the day of their death. All earthly power sits under God's larger rule. Solomon also says that wickedness does not free the people who practice it. And that's a warning to anyone who's tempted to use power selfishly. Sin can be confused with strength. It might even look like you're getting your own way. But what it does is it binds people. It doesn't release them. Those who use authority, he says, for selfish ends, are not as free as they think. Although to us it may seem like it. It may seem like so many people are getting away with so much. But verse 9 brings a conclusion that is probably quite sobering. There's a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. Power used badly harms the people underneath it. It also harms the person using it. Domineering leadership damages relationships, hardens the conscience, stores up trouble for all. And Solomon says he's watched this under the sun. He wants us to see this quite clearly. I think this probably is a kindness to those who feel small under someone else's decisions, who feel powerless under someone else's rule. The person over you has the power over us to shape our week, but they don't own the future. They may frustrate us, but they don't sit on the throne of heaven. They may mismanage what they've been given, but they will answer for it. The truth will not remove every hard day. That understanding will not make it easy every day. But I think what it can do is keep the hard days from consuming us entirely. And so this passage speaks more than one group. To those under authority, it says, do not live in constant reaction. Seek wisdom. To those with authority, it says, your power is limited, temporary, and accountable. No one under the sun gets to play God. So, if earthly authority is real, if it's imperfect, if it's limited, how do we live under it with peace? Of course, the answer is Jesus. Every single time. He lived under earthly authority more wisely than anyone else ever has. He is perfect. He can do that. He grew up under parents who didn't always understand him. He lived under Roman occupation. He stood before religious leaders who mishandled truth. He stood before Pilate, a political ruler with power to condemn or release him. And in all of that, he never confused earthly power with God's throne. When he is in the desert, when he is in the 40 days, the devil tempts him with having authority over the earth. Jesus knows this is not what he wants. It's not what he needs. Jesus is going to be on the throne, have all authority over all things. He knew this earthly power is really just a myth. It's fake. It's not real. And in fact, it was really that the devil was trying to be above Jesus and say, I will control you. You can have this, but you will be answerable to me. John 19:10-11 says, do you refuse to speak to me? This is what Pilate said. Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you? Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. Jesus does not deny that Pilate has power. He does. But he places that power under God. He said, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. And I think that is the key. Earthly authority is real, but it is given. It is lended, borrowed. It's under God. And I think this is where the gospel can really help us with our frustration. On the cross, Jesus submitted himself under unjustly earthly authority, not because those rulers deserved his trust, but because his father's saving plan was being carried out. The true king stood under flawed human power so that sinners like us could be rescued and brought into his own kingdom. And some people might see Jesus as being weak. He didn't, apart from the moment where he's in, where they're exchanging money and he tips the tables over. Everyone likes to quote that one. But maybe people would think Jesus is weak. But step back a bit. What Jesus did not allow was for anyone on earth to dictate when he would die, when he would go to the cross, and when he would give his life for the people of this world. They felt they had control, but they had none. Jesus decided as and when the Father decided when it was time to do the things he needed to do. Multiple times he would tell the disciples, it is not yet my time. It is not my time yet, over and over again. So when we think control is in the little things, Jesus says, no, they're in the bigger things. It's all about timing. It's all about the bigger plan and what's going on. But this means our hope does not rise and fall with the quality of the people over us. If every manager were wise, every official fair, every decision careful, we would still need Christ. If the people over us fail us, as they sometimes do and will, we're still not abandoned. God remains God. Christ remains King. The cross shows us that God can work through even messy human power for good purposes we could not have arranged ourselves. Despite what they planned and they schemed, God used it to bring about his glory. Romans 13 verse 1 says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Because Christ is King, we can honour earthly authority without panic, without stressing. We do not need to treat every leader as perfect. We do not need to treat every leader as the enemy. We can obey where we can, appeal where we should, and refuse only where faithfulness to God requires it. And still through it all, we can keep a softer heart. Why is that? Because our hope is not in people. When you detach that, when you take it apart and go, this person's making a decision, but I also make terrible decisions about my own life. Grace be to God, I stand here today. Grace be to God that they stand here today. So as we come to an end here of this message, when we all feel that familiar rise of frustration under someone else's decision, slow down. This is a challenge for us. Ephesians talks about this a lot. Fruit of the Spirit, right? Read that list. How challenging is that list of the fruit of the Spirit? The last one, self-control. Oh Lord, I need your grace. But slow down. Jesus always, what I did say to his disciples, find a private place. Pray to him. Speak to him. That might be our slowdown. That might be our ability. Our get out. Let me go and take this away. Ask whether this is a moment for patience. Ask whether it's a careful conversation. Or are we actually doing the right thing and refusing sin being put upon us? Wisdom, what Solomon says. We should remember that the person over us is not God. We should remember they have no more power than the next person. But we also need to remember balance, don't we? We are not God either. And so as much as it will sometimes evade us, sometimes be difficult, we're called to rest in the rule of Christ. Take it to God. It doesn't mean you have to be quiet about it. It doesn't mean you can't share it with him. If you are frustrated about anything, I would argue the best thing first is to do is take it and have a conversation with God about it. We can remember that God holds all the power under his hands, in his hands and under his authority. And so I hope as we go about our weeks, and certainly as we may encounter difficulties in how let me take a specific example. On the 5th of September, we will be busy. Take a breath, take a moment. When it starts getting too much for you, step out. Don't be afraid to do that. What we really do not want is us killing ourselves over these things. Step back, say, hold on. It is not about me. This is about Jesus. So I'm going to give you exit ramps all over the place on the 5th of September. Get out of wherever you are if you feel it's getting too intense for you. Find a room and sit in it for 5 minutes. I'm telling you, it is going to be incredibly difficult at times when you're faced with a lot of people coming at you, when we're trying to work with one another. But this is what we're trying to practice. And we won't get it perfect every time. We will fail at times. But at least we're aware you can step off, step away and say, Lord, I need a minute with you. All right, I'm going to pray and then we'll worship and have prayer time together. Lord, we confess how easy it is to become restless and hard under imperfect authority.